How about some timely realignment of some of the metaphors? Primarily one. Just as it would be if you were attempting to describe red or maybe green to the classically diagnosed colorblind, if you're going to try to do that, you would have to take, I assume you all know that normally colorblind, I think the majority, they have a trouble with red and some with green, but they can see some color, just what's generally referred to as colorblind. So if you were going to try and describe to an intelligent person, you have got to make some sort of comparison. I mean, I guess you could start off talking about the difference between the American and National Football League and see if you could get somewhere from there to describing red, but let's assume that you're a pretty straightforward person, fairly sane. You would attempt to take the colors that they can perceive and go from there, would you not? Thank you. Yes, I knew you would. In that same way, any sort of metaphor, you have got to start off taking something that's known. Are we going to take a side trip already? All right, real quick. If you'd like to consider it, I or you, we did not make up the use of metaphors and symbolism. But note that the great use of it in such areas, probably the greatest market for it has always been religion. The metaphors, the symbolism, no matter what they say, always amounts to this. I mean, I'm sure that some of them have tried to say, well, wait a minute, we're trying to take heavenly, godlike matters and describe them on a carnal level, and therefore we have got to draw upon some sort of metaphor, similes, parables. But notice, even though they couldn't realize it, they still use it to try and explain city affairs. They don't use it. They don't try and draw something from, as they would put it, from some kind of higher level, some kind of spiritual level. If it were true what they were doing, they're drawing it and bringing it down to explain this. Do I have to put the rest of it? If I jumped into all of religion's nest throughout history and said, do you realize, just the way the life is situated, that anything can be run one way can be run another way? There's no such thing as a terminal one-way street. And they'd probably say, what in the hell did that mean? I'd say, why do you try and take, assuming you're correct, that there are higher ideas, some sort of spiritual or intellectual paradigms that you're going to drag down, you and the religion and some holy book, you're going to drag it down here to help explain what's going on here, okay? They'd probably go, I either made a big point or I did a cheap imitation of Jackie Mason, I just thought. At any rate, there is something else having to do, is why our metaphors and symbolisms are not big sellers in the marketplace, because they do not do the expected. Back to what we were talking about. But in the same way, you have to use something to start with, and as you know, for around here we've been using the metaphor, and if you can see it another way, even the symbolism, but begin with the metaphor of the city, and I've even drawn it out, and we had the scale model made, talking about the city being where everyone is born, life in general, the secondary world, transpires, and then I take the blame, drew out the outside city, somewhere out there, like up on the hillside, was the revolutionist camp, where people are trying to see something else. Not hermits, not anti-city, but that can be realigned for my own reasons. That neurally, to tighten it up a little bit, neurally, which of course is what all this is about, there cannot be a revolutionist camp actually outside the city. There is no way to do something, to begin something, to work on something, to complete something, but of course to begin something, that not being possible answers the inquiry. You cannot do it outside of the old established DNA-based city. You cannot suddenly just spring up outside the city limits, or even gradually. whatever is going to be done has got to grow out of the city. So rather than picturing, or me drawing out, and you even picturing the city with all the institutions, metaphorically, literally, symbolically, all the activities, all the thoughts, all the human emotions going on down there in the city, which is the same as the line level of consciousness, wherever your city is, wherever the collective city of man is at any particular time on any part of this planet, inside the brain, then instead of picturing that it's outside or a new building site is in some way outside the city, let's try it another way. Consider that inside the city there is a different structure, and the structure would be an invisible tower. That's what it amounts to. But it's right there in the midst of the metropolitan area. And on that basis, then we could still refer to anything from this invisible tower, which, if you really want to make it a little more cute, this invisible tower has got to be constructed on a plot of land that is not in the city records. Well, it's more or less got to be a spot of undeveloped property there in the city, but it's almost got to be off the property rolls. Or those of you who have even a more symbolic twist of your mind, then you could figure that an invisible tower could even be built on property other than I described, and who would notice anyway. But based upon that, then from this invisible tower, we could still refer to a revolutionist view of something. And then instead of just saying at the city, then you could say as opposed to the street level view. Whereas if you were back down there at the street, you were more or less faced with the same kind of limitations, the same kind of view, the same kind of noise, the same kind of symbolic air pollution. But you are simply left with a view that is street level. Now, it doesn't matter whether you're 6'1" or 5'5". You're still there in the midst of the city. Now, whatever this kind of obscure, metaphorically described revolutionist view has always been, whatever it may be today, as opposed to the street level view, just take this picture and realize that the revolutionist view cannot be divorced from the city view. It cannot be in some way absolutely separated from everyone else's intrinsic, genetic view. Saying that on the basis of assuming all of you are now past the point of having any concern about, well, people have different experiences and different environment in the city. The city is genetically based. Everyone is born into a general DNA pool. Street level awareness does not differ on the basis that you were born on a different street than somebody else. There is the general division, for the sake of this kind of obscure activity, that there would be one ordinary view, and it doesn't matter whether it's a Christian view, a Jewish view, a white view, an American Indian view, a Chinese view, none of that. I am aware of the fact that at city level they apparently at times do come in conflict, that they are apparently of a different stripe. But it's all city, street level view. Unless you can find one that is non-polarized. And you can't. So the view, although it may appear to be different, that Ukraine's view might be now in certain specific areas very opposed to the general view of those in the Republic of Russia. That there might be a complete different view, apparently, of somebody living in Northern Ireland and somebody living in England. But notice the view, you can say it's different, but they are both at street level. As long as you can turn around, if you start out and say, well, wait, this view over here is singular. Whatever you picked out. The view of a reformed conservative northern Albanian. And if you tried to say, now that is a singular view, that is not, you cannot call that some kind of genetic view, because for the last 45 years, the total life experience of Albanians, especially those in the northern sector, has been not only an oppressed experience, but as opposed to other oppressed peoples, this has been a singularly oppressed experience. That may be, but if they can say that, it is one end of a stick. It is one end of a magnet. It is only half of a description of something. It is a slanderous recalling of memory. For one thing, you're leaving out who is doing the oppressing. Somebody is dancing with Albania. Somebody, the northern reform or conservative Albanians. They are dancing with someone. So there is no such thing as a singular view, no matter what group, no matter what individual you pick out, because it is still at street level. As long as anybody, if you point out that their experience is singular, then it's singular because of what? Somebody else, some other group. Well, this person has a singular, or this group has a singular negative experience. Ah, tut-tut. Why so? Because they're at the other end of the magnet. It's because of the people at the other end, the positive end. So this is a different view than theirs. Oh, yes. At street level. Now, down there, as we're all aware of, we're just talking about, there are many people, many people running around believing that they are the recipients, that they are the victims, that they are the participants in a singular view, or at least in a view that is not in touch with, is not aligned with someone on the next street, a different religion, whatever. It's all street level view. The only exception would be to get into a position that I was trying to represent by an invisible tower that is not on a different street. It's not overcoming somebody on a different block. It's not being overcome. You understand that down the city, everybody is rushing about, looking like mad little rabbits, mad hatters, and some of them even resembling James Thurber, running here and there, fighting, cursing, putting up blockades, throwing bombs, throwing flowers. There is nowhere to go down there to get you away from street level. But that is part of the life of the city. The only way you've got to understand is to go in a different direction. And stuck with three-dimensional direction, since we're stuck here with a three-dimensional taping tonight, that it's not in combat, it's not in conflict with street-level views, with whatever's going on at that level. It's simply in another direction. But notice it is not divorced. It is not, going back to the other metaphors right quick, it is not the old ideas that religions have had, in every religion. If we hadn't offended them with the way you people act sometimes, if nice religious people had showed up tonight and were sitting here, they could take what's been said and go, yes, yes, oh yes, yes, yes. Well, you're talking about blank. You're talking about Buddhism, Hinduism, Islam. You're talking about, it could be some minor cult, but this, oh yes, no doubt about it. I know exactly what you mean. But their idea of a different view, of a different man, is always that which is divorced from the city. Or else why would you attempt to become, as they call it in Christianity and many other religions, why would you attempt to undergo some sort of conversion? Why would you attempt to become a new man? Why would you be born again? It is a kind of divorcing that, all right, there's a carnal, sinful, incorrect, imprecise, improper level at which to live, which they could say you're calling street level intelligence, street level views. You have got to move away from that. You've got to get into higher planes. I like that idea of the invisible towers. You go into a higher plane somewhere. And what's the connection with this? Well, nothing other than the fact that you're alive and other people are, but if you've fully become a blank, then you are leaving this behind. You're shaking it off, the dust off of your shoes, and turning your back on that kind of crummy life. There is no such thing as a divorce from the city. There is no such thing as suddenly springing up a new piece of intelligence. Of course, they might want to say a new heart, a new part of your spirit. It does not simply spring up in the marshes. It does not spring up outside the brain. The brain is in the closet with everything else. You cannot step outside. And so I believe I'll develop a new heart, metaphorically. I believe I'll develop a new spirit, a new love of man, a new humility, a new anything. Pardon me, I'll step right out here, and there's nowhere to step to. And of course, if they wanted to take this aside any further, which they wouldn't, then they might begin to actually try and eat such metaphors without the benefit of turning your fork and just go ahead and drop it in, because the metaphor then they would go, wait a minute, that explains why everybody wants to be a blank Christian, Jew, Muslim, but nobody can. Because the only way to succeed, according to the information that life makes available at that level, the only thing it is possible to think about in a polarized three-dimensional world, is, wait a minute, the only way that I could be a blank, a real Jew or Christian or Muslim, would be, they could say now using my picture, the only way would be, you're correct, is you got to get outside the city. Whether you want to picture going away from the city or going up in this invisible, spiritual tower and getting away from it. And if they could hear the rest, they'd go, wait, I liked it up until then, but wait a minute, that explains why none of us can do it. Everybody wants to do it, and everybody would agree. Now, wait a minute, you are not a real Christian or a real Jew or real anything as long as you still have any of your old self, or at least the parts of your old self that religion, that philosophy disapproves of. But you got you can stand on one foot instead of two. And I guess if you get real good, you can stand up on your toes instead of your whole foot. Now, I guess if anybody had a certain muscular nomenclature and enough time, whatever happened to Norman, and enough time to practice, let's assume that you get off just the ball of your foot and toes, and let's assume that you could get it down to your big toe. That everybody else is standing around flat-footed, stuck to this carnal, sinful, dumb, regressive city, metaphorically. Clods. And here it is. You have worked your way up to 1 foot, so that you've got less connection to this shameful existence. Then you get up to the ball of your foot, then up to 1 toe. But do note, even I would be impressed if you could stand there the rest of your life on 1 toe. But please do note, that's it. Unless you believe that perhaps you're going to come back reincarnated as Malcolm Forbes reincarnated, come back as one of his hot air balloons and suddenly begin to float away, that you become so Forbish. The point is, you could work all your life and you can get to 1 toe, but you are still standing there in the damn city on 1 toe. Back to, this is really an aside, if they could see it, which they can't, but some of you might get something from this, since we're not attacking them. The only reason I brought it up was for you, is if they would follow that kind of metaphor, they go, wait a minute, that's it. I liked your metaphor, they could say to me, up to that point, that yeah, we are trying to rise above the city. That's what this is all about. But then it might strike them if I said this whole thing about standing on your foot and all that, is that's true. No matter what you do, you still got to stand here, if nothing else, on 1 toe. So to that degree, you would, if we're going to draw out some equation, that my desire, every right-thinking person's desire should be to be a whatever, a Hindu or some cult or whatever. And that equals 100% divorce from the city. It will never reach 100% unless you can float. You can get it down to 1 toe. But that 1 toe, you're still tied to the city. It is not a divorcement. There are aspects that we can describe that people are driven to dream about and to talk about, and that many of you have your own experience enough that we can talk about it in a slightly different way, if you will picture the invisible tower. And that is still taking this picture, that city, we're all born in the city. Everybody you ever heard of, everybody that's ever walked this planet was born there. They were not born in heaven, they were not born in paradise, and they were not born on Jupiter. They were born right here. They grew up here. Any idea that you can grow up, or that you could raise your children, or somebody raised somebody in the past in some way? So wait a minute, I am not going to let those kind of metaphorical viruses and bacteria of the city touch, befoul my offspring. People have tried that, in case you don't know it. If you've ever never knew anybody, picture a poster boy or girl for maniacs squared and cubed. Because that's what you would raise, no matter who you are, no matter how well you thought, well, wait, I'm going to grow a child, I'm going to raise a child, a kid that will not be spoiled, as you put it, by the pollution of the city. Trust me, do not even live in the same neighborhood with somebody like that. Even if you don't trust me, you won't last there long. Everyone is born there, genetically. Everyone must be raised there if you're just going to fit in eventually to a fair definition of the middle of the bell curve, just ordinary, walking around, fairly sane men and women. You're going to be raised there. You're going to be polluted. You're going to be fogged on, smogged on. You're going to be pushed about. People are going to holler. There's going to be all kinds of inter-community, neighborhood fights, squabbles going on. That is where you grow up. That's where you grow up physically, of course, but that's where you grow up here. There is no choice other than a kind of extreme moving from the sanity and the safety of the bell curve that you would be a maniac if you tried to do that from scratch. So there is no divorcement. There is no divorcement possible in any sort of profitable way. Nothing even resembling profitable. To try and raise a child. If somebody had tried to raise you, you wouldn't be here. To try and raise you that way that they already had some idea that, ooh, this ordinary, this city life, they might say as you call it, I understood that years ago, I didn't use your terms, and boy, I did everything possible. I devoted a large part of my life. I changed my own personal life around just so I could protect my child from that. You know, I don't want to see him or her. I don't have to, but I don't even want to be in the same room. Now, if you're wearing good clothes or got anything on you that might break and that you consider valuable, I don't even want to see them. It is not possible. But then ordinary people then, still caught up into the need for life's continuity via religion, a kind of still small, simmering, shimmering, weak of attempt to do this sort of thing. If they then said, well, never mind all that. It's too late for me anyway. My parents didn't try to do anything extraordinary to me, so now it's up to me to straighten out what has happened in the past. There is nothing to straighten out in the past. It is up to me to cleanse myself of the pollution of the city, of the carnal life, or whatever they call it. You can't cleanse yourself. Strip your skin away, drive yourself nuts. There is nothing to clean away. It raised you, and here you are at some age, and you may say, this is not enough. I'm not mad, whatever your words were. I'm not mad, I'm not upset. And I got nothing against the city. I got nothing against Ferraris. I got nothing against nice clothes. But what I'm looking for is not there. All right, there's no way to go back, no profitable way, and believe that I should have known better. My parents, I didn't have parents. I was raised by nobody. I was raised by wolves or maybe an insurance salesman. I can't remember. But I actually had no parents. And so any feeling that now, since no one tried to protect me from the ordinary pollution and foul environment of the ordinary world, now I must do it for myself. Here I'm at the age of whatever. So here I am, let's assume that you're somewhere over 21 and that you would be considered grown. If you had any sense then, you would realize there is no way, or I'm telling you now, there is no way to go back and say, well, I'm going to undo the damage done to me because there was no damage. I mean, here you are, 21, 25, 30, whatever. You're fairly sane. You can say, yeah, but I'm not satisfied. You're sane. You made it this long. You're not in a nut house. You're not in prison. You can pay your rent. You can eat. And you're still looking for something. But any idea that, yeah, but what I'm looking for, I would even be closer to had it not been for the past. If it hadn't been for the past, you wouldn't be here. Yes, but I've got to go back. My past was not... How shall I put it? Put it any way you want to. It was not, my past was not exemplary. Well, hell, you're not exemplary. Yeah, but that proves why. Almost got me. So what are you going to do? What if you could do this, I would ask. What if you can actually redo yourself in some way or clean up mistakes you've made, as psychiatry would have it, as religions would have it? And they go, yeah, well, I'm sure we can. All right, if you could do that, now understand this. If that could actually be done, if it actually happened, then you are changing the past. Now, I don't have time to go through a whole lot, but just some of you ought to be sharp enough that even an ordinary intelligence, if I call it on a real humid day, you might go, ooh, you're right. In other words, not just clean yourself up now. People try that. If I said, no, you got the right idea. You've got a longing for some kind of greater intelligence. Yeah. But it's obvious, and you still got it. Yeah. And you're pretty sane. I'm looking at you. Yeah. So you're just a pretty ordinary person. Yeah. Except for this great longing, and nobody else shares it with me. My family, nobody. Okay. And so you believe that right now, what would be of greater help to you than anything right now? And most of these people, they would say, you mean short of having the secret answer? Yeah, not that. Okay, what would really be a benefit would be, in retrospect, the things I see. Nobody's fault, this person would say, perhaps. So they were really good, ordinary people now, still with that kind of hunger. They'd say it was nobody's fault, but looking back now, I see that my hunger, the desire to find this something else, to move forward in some way, I would be in a better position, without any doubt, to do so, had it not been for a certain list of mistakes, diseases, bruises that I could enumerate for you that happened to me. Now I could say, all right, if that be true, and as serious as you are, and the person said, yeah, then we're not talking about some kind of phony baloney Freudian crap about, well, now, wait a minute. You believe that your uncle mistreated you on your 7th birthday party and that you're still remembering and that's had some effect. Yeah, that might not be number 1 on my list, but that would be in the top 10. All right? But now, as serious as you are about this, we can't just do something like talk for the next 20 years about your uncle and try and investigate his problems. What made him do that, if indeed he did it? He's dead now, we don't know, but your memory. Is it exact what he did? Well, no. You know how memory is. It's kind of vague, but it keeps telling me. Okay. Do you realize that people normally, they get involved with this at the city, street level, could spend $20,000 or $30,000 in 20 or 30 years of their life trying to do something with that? They go, yeah, I'm well-read enough. I know that happens. So I could say, well, look, no offense, that's just part of city activity. But I'm talking to you seriously. They go, yeah. Don't you believe that has got to be less than efficient? I mean, have you got that much time to deal with that? Does it even strike you as being proper in your case? And they'd go, no. So that's all right. Do you understand then, if it is possible to do what you say that you believe would be, without any doubt, beneficial, that is, to clean up, or if you had not experienced some of these things, such as your uncle's probable mistreatment of you, yeah, then insofar as in some way that you're saying, and I'm not questioning it yet, but you're saying had that and another small laundry list of mistakes, errors, mistreatments, just things that happened to you, accidents, had these things not happened, you would be in better shape now to find what it is you want, or in better condition to receive it, to hear it, if you ran across it. Yeah. Now, I'm not questioning it. But now how are we going to deal with that? That if you're sure that right now, forget moving forward, you're saying that you'd be in better position if some of the pollution, some of the accidents, some of the fender benders and the scrapes that you received growing up in the city, those first 30 years, had they not happened, you would without any doubt be in better position now to either receive some kind of new information or to find it or something. Yeah. All right. And you agree that we can't spend, or do you hear me? That it's not for you. If there's any real basis, any possibility of feeding this hunger, that you can't go back and start taking this list down and trying to talk about, trying to remember what your uncle did. Yeah, I almost hear that. Okay. So it's not a matter of going back and talking about it or rationalizing. If there is any validity to what you said, what we've got to do is actually change the past. All right. I can almost hold it. Okay, hold it a second. You do hear this, that if we went back and we changed just one part of your past, you would not be staying where you are now. Oh, God, no. Jesus, I got to go. And that's about all they could do with it. But that is a fact. There is no changing back at the city level. There is no way to divorce yourself. And yet, everything tells you, assuming you followed all that, everything tells you and everyone else, everyone at city level, that what I've just described is a fact. Not just their uncle, and they do not have to be supporters of Western psychology, but it's the basis that I would be in better condition now to do something extraordinary, to actually live a more upright Muslim life, had it not been for these things. I could tell you, probably some I can't remember, but there's at least, I can tell you 4 or 5 things that had they not happened, I would now be in a position to be much better. What they're saying is, if I can divorce myself from the city, I would not be of the city. It is your mother, and it is going to bury you. Not just literally, not just physically, but here. And yet life, again, has everybody dreaming, driven. God, I would give anything to go to Neptune. And there's nobody on this planet, ever on this planet, that can get to Neptune with this fuel. There's the efficiency. There is the nature of polarized energy, polarized life in a 3-dimensional environment. That is, I know they believe that atomic energy and nuclear fission and even fusion, if they could do it, would be the supreme source of energy. I'm not in any way connected with Con Ed or anti-Con Ed, but the real efficient energy, it can't be seen because you are part of it. Everybody's intellect, but the real efficient energy is simply the polarized nature of life within a 3D environment, which there is no, I guess I could make up one or some other time, but forget about doing cold fusion in a little beaker or a little mason jar. Consider the little jar, the little beaker, as being the 3-dimensional universe as you know it. And inside of there, forget fusion and uranium and hydrogen and ordinary Utah tap water. Just inside there, all you need is polarized energy of any nature. It doesn't matter what. Just fill it up, if nothing else, with chocolate and vanilla ice cream. Or if that doesn't seem exotic enough, fill it up with up and down or left and right. And then cap it, and you got it. Because what you've got is this universe. This son of a gun runs on and on and on. And nobody knows why. Oh yes, God did it. It runs on, and nobody knows why. It's because there is efficiency on the hoof. If an ordinary intellect could actually divorce itself from the city, it would be the end of its own energy. It would be the end of it. And of course, if large groups of people could, it would be the end of the groups. Then the energy, the fusion, the production of energy going on inside of that particular little beaker or mason jar would be over. It would have run down. It is not the revolutionist view. It is not a divorce from the city. It's in no way in conflict with the city. It is not anti-city. It is, in fact, like an invisible tower. And where I started back before you people drug it way off the track was I was going to point out some of the aspects that not only metaphorically can be described, but as I said, many of you have had your own experience. It's not all that strange. But if you picture then the invisible tower, and it's not floating, it's a tower actually built in the city, that you are now able to think in a different place, but it's not away from the brain. It's not in some way in the hands of the gods. It is not drifting off with Peter Pan. It is an actual tower, except it's just invisible. And it's actually constructed. It has no other choice where you started. But certain of the aspects are, or you should be able to picture how this then makes more possible whatever it is we've been talking about using the terms plain think. At city level, when you're involved, when your own thinking processes, like everything else in your body, from the liver, the contraction, the movements of your muscles, all being run by polarized energy, back at city level, at street level, the polarization is such that it is not possible to experience anything that would resemble direct, plain thinking. Or to experience, if you want another metaphor for it, any sort of plain sight. Because if you're at street level, all sight is simply, of course, a reflection of light, and you're back to polarized energy. You're not seeing something, you're seeing something that bounced off of something else. From the invisible tower, you're able to see that which is not, literally, which is not visible at street level. I think I'll cut this fairly short. We've been through, and many of you have already thought on your own about such as this based upon your own experience, but such things is literally. That's a hell of a thing to say in the middle of a metaphor, isn't it? But it's still based on the metaphor, but literally, built on the metaphor now. It's even a little below that. Bedrock in the city of metaphor is known as symbolism. But at any rate, you can literally, built on the metaphor, resting on the symbolism. You can see that which you cannot see at street level. All sorts of things I could do, but I was going to point out, one is, that is literally describable because it is three-dimensionally viable, is the higher up you get, in a sense, you can see the past. I mean, you're all aware of that. You go up in a plane, just a regular commercial plane, if you're in phone contact with somebody right, that the pilot says, yes, we're right above Detroit, and you're talking to somebody in Detroit, you could look into the past. That is, you could look, let us say, if you're up high enough, you could at least see, let's say, if you're looking southeast, and let's say, just for instance, you could see Cleveland, and there's a huge fire. And they haven't even heard about it yet. The fire's already happened, and you can look into the past, and you can tell them. They say, well, we haven't heard anything about that. I'm watching the news now. You're looking into the past. You can see the sun going up. You can see the sun going down, figuratively speaking, from a different height that people on the ground could not. And in a sense, you could see the future. Because also, to somebody, let's say to somebody in Detroit, then as you call somebody in Detroit, and you could say, you had better go out and see about your clothes if anything's outside because there's a terrible storm. Where? And you could be looking out west of Detroit from that altitude and be seeing a storm without any doubt, and you can see it moving. You can see a tornado. You can say, you better run for it. They can say, hold the phone a minute, and they look out the window, they stand up on their toes, and they see nothing. They're listening to news, nothing. And yet you see what amounts to the future for them because you're seeing that 40 miles west of there, coming their direction, head on, blinders on, is a nice-sized tornado or a thunderstorm. That is why I said that it literally will rest on that metaphor, but now, of course, it is something else. But inside of the nervous system, the collective memory of mankind is such that it is there. But at street level, you can't see it, you can't hear it. People dream about it, people talk about it, but they don't see it. From a different height than here, in a sense, you can actually see the past. Not in a book, you just can see the past. It's right there. And I would be tempted to say that in some sort of, let's just say, general, of no great consequence, telling, you might get a glimpse of the future. Except you got to remember this, that in the same way as predicting the weather would be the fish trying to predict, that is, in the fishbowl, what the fingers are going to do when they ain't got no idea that the fingers are connected to the arm bone's connected to the shoulder bone's connected to the brain bone, and the brain bone's connected to the limbic bone, and they don't even know all this, and there's no telling. The end of their fingers may be about to die, may be about to have sexual intercourse, may be about to get drunk, may be about to quit drinking. There is no way to predict at a lesser level what's going on, like at a three-dimensional level, to absolutely predict what's going on because of the complexity of a higher dimension. But in the same way, as you all know, that even now, at Earth level, meteorology knows that you would not be safe sitting up there in that plane telling somebody that 40 miles away, I'm guessing how fast that's going, that you're telling the person right under you in Detroit, you're saying, I'm telling you there's bad weather that's going to be there in a minute now. Bad weather can disappear almost in a blink. It may not get there, and you're looking and saying it's going, and you maybe even you say, wait a minute, I'll call you back. And you may spend 5 minutes watching this thing, this tornado move right toward Detroit. At least you upset them. You say, I'll call you back and stay by the phone because I may have something important. But you don't want to scare them. So you look, and sure enough, that tornado, you can see it, and you ask the pilot, if you don't know about trigonometry, and he says, all right, I see that tornado. As far as, we're right above Detroit now, I recognize, there's Henry Ford the 14th. Yeah, I recognize him. That tornado, I can tell, is 50 miles away. And I'm judging, they all judge, it's running on X amount of miles an hour, so it's going to hit Detroit in such time. So you think, wait a minute, let me watch. And so you watch your 5 minutes, and sure enough, it is running straight, steady speed right to Detroit. So then you call back. You say, hey, I wanted to be sure I didn't want to frighten you and cry wolf, but there's a tornado is about to hit Detroit. I'm telling you, get in a basement or get out of town, do something. And your friend down there goes, what? And they look out, no tornado. The tornado can still break up and just disappear. That is the only reason I hesitated, as you should know, to give the same sort of weight to being able from an invisible tower inside your own nervous system to see the future in any way resembling the past. That's why I said you can sort of get a general feel, but it's of no great importance, because you cannot absolutely predict what's going on at this three-dimensional level when it's being driven by a six-dimensional machinery. But you can see things going on in the city and things that have gone on that everyone else thinks have gone. Like when you call down to the person in Detroit and you say, do you know there's a huge explosion going on and that happened in Cleveland? They say, no. What time did it happen? You say, well, as a matter of fact, I happened to notice my watch, and I know where I am right now. I'm calling you from a plane, but that would be 4:30. And they go, well, it's 5 o'clock now here in Detroit. And you say, yeah, I know that. And they say, well, there's no, I'm watching the news. There's nothing about that. I'm talking to somebody living. In essence, what you're doing is seeing into the past vis-a-vis them, because they're saying, well, wait a minute, it's 5 o'clock. I'm watching the 5 o'clock news, and there's nothing about a fire or nothing about any sort of explosion. And, of course, it's going to come up shortly. But at the time you're talking to them, you are literally looking into the past simply because spatially of a different position. So in that sense, you can see the past or whatever literal consequence you want to make out of that, but you cannot in the same kind of certainty talk about looking in the future. I just threw that in, at least any of you think, boy, the progress I'm making now, someday soon I'll be able to literally and to great profit to myself say the sooth. I'll be able to, I'll put them all out of business. Or I'll just forget put them all out of business, I'll go hit the tracks. All in all, intellectually, and in other ways, but we're talking intellectually in the main tonight, but from an intellectual view above street level, you are freed here of the indigenous, necessary, efficient restraints of the polarized energy running the city. You are freed in ways that transcend just intellectually. You cannot transcend them physically in the same way we're talking about staying on your toe. It is only those driven by the ordinary needs of life and that kind of spillover electrical energy that people believe that if they could become a good blank, Christian or Jew or whatever, that they would in some way sprout wings, develop a third eye in the middle of their forehead, or be able to leap tall buildings or young girls in a single bound. It is not physically being freed from the restraints of the city, because that will come soon enough. Don't you worry about that. The city will let you go. Yeah, but I didn't mean that way. But it will free you even from the restraints, because the nervous system, for you thinking, is tied most directly, even spatially, to human emotions, to the limbic system, the whole nervous system. So there are certain freedoms that are available that you're no longer driven by the same kinds of market forces down on the street, and not just the Wall Street, but the kind of symbolic, literal, polarized forces driving not only the intellect, but your feelings, your human emotions. How about a slight shift? How about we have oft times of late, it's not that late, but of late, use the term from a more complex view. And also speak about a more direct or plain view. Now, as we all know, you can't have it down both ways. It's just, I'll agree that some of our audience has been nice enough that people have not leaped up and sometimes say, wait a minute, what's this about plain view? It was no more than 20 minutes ago or last week. We were using kind of terms, more complex view. Wait a minute. Aha! Caught! Finally. You follow, because I have knowingly used the terms manifold, more complex view of something. Or to say that if you could see outside the limits of three-dimensional sensations, which are quite efficient, quite on the money for the city street level view, but if you could see, if we're assuming that we're inside of 6 dimensions at least, then if you could see from a 4th dimensional view or a 5th dimensional view, then you would be seeing in a more complex way. And everybody can go, yeah, I can follow that even theoretically. All right, but then talk about a more plain view as opposed to that kind of episodic, conclusion-oriented thinking and view that everybody has in life. Down at the street level, things are always very quick, very noisy, and you got to look and you got to judge. You know, where you're going to step out in traffic, somebody reaches, comes up to you and say, buy a Rolex for $10. You got to decide. You're in a hurry. You got to go, well, no. Or, is it a real one? You got to decide how smart you are. Maybe you can. All right, $8. In the city, you have got to deal on the basis of energy running. Like, the signs say, walk now, don't walk now. They might as well be saying, think now, now stop. All right, now there, here. It's like that. Is it supposed to be? And so we have used the kind of descriptions that there would be something else more, or something else available would be a more direct seeing of it, a plain seeing of it. But it can't be both. Can't talk about it from a more complex view, unquote, and then still talk about a more direct view, because a more direct view, even a more plain view, you're talking about something that's at the very least, is the opposite of a more complex view. So come on, which is it? How about people? Not how about people. How about people say, we hadn't avoided the question yet about how can it be both. No, we're just stalling for time now that we've been caught. How about someone says, I've got a book I read that is astounding. It is life-changing. Another statement. A guy says, I read a book I like. What's the difference? What's the connection? Now we're talking about the same guy, the same book, you understand that. He could have said either one, theoretically. Both senses make sense. Both things have been said by some human before. Do you see any feathery fallout from these two fowls? If someone says, God, what great music. The same guy says, I heard some music that I liked. I went to a seminar. I heard a guy speak. The man was amazing. The same guy says, I heard a guy talk last night and I enjoyed it. Do you see any tie-in between the question of how can you talk about a more complex view and then try to turn right around and talk about a more direct, plain view? When you can say, the book is amazing. Or just say, God, I like that book. Is it not the same thing? We got to hurry. Come on. Is it not the same thing? Yeah. But is it not different? Yeah. Yeah, but it can't both, right? Well, yeah. Is one of the statements, let's stick with the example, I assume you all follow it, of saying, I read this book that's amazing. There's one statement. The other statement is, I read this book and boy do I like it. Is one of those statements more complex than the other one? Is one of those statements more direct than the other one? Is one of those statements, and the statements, of course, is a verbal dressing up of some energy running through the human nervous system and coming out at the brain and then through the tongue. Is one of those statements more complex than the other? Is one more simple and direct than the other? Is one more correct than the other? Is one more true than the other? Some of these you're going to have to do for yourself, of course, since we ring out. But to make it more interesting, don't forget to consider. And you're surrounded by it. You do it. Life drives you to do it. It is part of the movement of the city. It's not an attack on anybody. But this is going on continuously. God, I love being a blank. And somebody says, or the same guy could say, it's great to be a blank. I know it makes it stickier. Let's go back to apparently things outside of you. I heard the new symphony by so-and-so. It is amazing. Same guy, same experience can say to you, I heard so-and-so's new symphony, and God, I enjoyed it. Boy, do I like it. Is the expression being driven by energy in some way, in one of those instances that is more complex, more manifold, more inclusive of something, or is one of them just simply more direct and right to it? And is one more correct than the other? Is one more true than the other? And then what I was going to suggest could make it more interesting. What is the otherwise unseen at street level connection between that which is true and that which is correct? What is the connection between that which could be more complex and that which could be more direct and simple? Could one of those kind of sentiments, in fact, be more equitable than the other one? Could one of those be more just? Because you don't have to stay. I didn't put quotes or stick my tongue out into my cheek when I said, is one of them more true than the other? Of course, that's the currency of city views and discussions of things, but it's not completely a waste of time if you have to start with any question about, well, is that true or not? Because you're back at city, street level. That's the way ordinary people, the ordinary intellect would try to deal with something. That is one of those statements that, God, this book is amazing. Statement A. Statement B is, God, I like this book. Is one of those statements more true than the other? You can start off there, but that is, you should very shortly after that ring the bell on yourself and say, come in off the playground and go inside and go up to the physics lab and then start considering, all right, maybe the first floor is one more correct than the other. And then get away from there and then get up and start things like, is one more complex than the other? Or is one more simple, more direct than the other? But then you could even go into, is one more just? Is one more equitable than the other? Well, we're about out. How about leave on a little interesting one? That's my opinion. Boy, is that my opinion. How about the good old story? I guess most of you would know the better known story in the Western world is the Tower of Babel. Would anybody see that as being the antimatter to my invisible tower? So because I'm proposing to you that this invisible tower within your own nervous system raises you up to a place wherein you can take a view that begins to bring together the dancers, that you begin to see that all those running back and forth down here in the greens and the yellows, and the men and the women, and the Christians and the Jews, and whoever, all of them running back and forth, is simply a magnet being turned around. That there's no actual war going on that someone's going to win. It's like a cartoon you begin to see down there, and here comes the Albanians. And they'll rush, and they're screaming, and they holler. And I'm using this metaphorical, and they rush, and suddenly, down this one street over in this neighborhood, they rush, and all of the Yugoslavs, if they're still together as a people, and they all run. And so you watch them, they run. You take a break for a second or go to the bathroom, and you come back, and what's happened? It is literally like a cartoon, because now the Yugoslavs are screaming, and they're running, and the Albanians are going. And then you look over here, and somebody's going this way, and then you look away, and then they're going this way, and they're going crosstown, and do the crosstown bus run all night long? Your view is, you begin to get the view that things are arranged in a way to accommodate the future. It's not a battle going on that's going to settle something. If anything got settled down there, you realize, ooh, that neighborhood is going to look like the South Bronx. They're going to burn it out. It's not a matter that, boy, I sure do hope the Albanians win, or anybody. No, what you hope for, figuratively speaking, what you can see from there, is you hope that once you do go to the bathroom and come back, then it's the other guys, it's their turn. They're running the Albanians back. Because then you know, it's like I went to the bathroom, and while I was in there, I breathed in, and I breathed out. I drink beer. I allow beer to return closer to Mother Earth. In the same way, boy, it's not that, boy, I hope the blanks win. Boy, I hope goodness finally wins. I got to go to the bathroom. When I come back, I hope they've won. No, you don't. Because if they did, you're going to come back and you're going to look down where it was going on. It might be some of your kin. You might have had some investments there. And the South Bronx is going to be a charitable comparison. It's going to be boom. Now, what you want is they all run down there and they breathed in and they breathed out. They all drank beer. They all took a piss. But the Tower of Babel, their story was almost an anti-invisible tower. Because what did it represent? Now, I know religion's got all kinds of stories for it, but think about it. You understand, they were trying to build a tower to heaven was the basic story. That men trying to rise, as the British might say, above their station. And God, for all I know, may be British, but whether he was or not, he did not take a kind view of people not knowing their place. And what was his big brainstorm? Instead of him taking a leak and just making the thing melt, he suddenly invented different languages. So that the bricklayers could no longer work with the carpenters and et cetera, which they didn't need to change language. All they needed was different unions for that. But anyway, that was later on down the highway. He made them all speak a different language, from whence we get the allegorical term, the Tower of Babel. Is confusion, people not being able to communicate, people not know what they're saying. Somebody tells somebody to do something and they don't do it. What does that sound like? Forget the Tower of Babel, that's the city. It is the anti-invisible tower. It is everything that the invisible tower would not be. Not because it's wrong, but because it's doing its job. The Tower of Babel that they talk about then would be simply people involved with, intellectually now, as the Tower of Babel, if it could have happened, men trying to unadvisedly, unacceptably, trying to rise above their station, that they tried to build a non-invisible tower. That is, a visible tower. They tried to build right there in the city and tried to rise above their station in life. And what did it amount to? What did it bring them? The grand payoff was confusion, which is no real payoff. It's just that they didn't get anywhere. If them had any sense, they went to all this work and got up there, and it's confusion. And they thought, well, hell, I could have stayed home. I spent my whole life trying to do this. Don't anybody that's religious take that personally like, wait a minute, here I am 50, and I've been trying to be a good blank all my life, and shit, I'm in no better shape than when I started. Now, I didn't say that, so don't take all this so personally.